Welcome back to the absolute most professional StarCraft 2, with the greatest player of all time, the Zerg in the blue, the finisher. It's Serral, facing off against the former Zerg World Champion, the Protoss in the red. We have Reynor, a best-of-7 Protoss versus Zerg showdown between Reynor, who's known for running circles around his opponents, and Serral is known for being 2 steps ahead. It'd be awesome if you could just take the 1 step of smashing that like button. And maybe even subscribe and help me counter the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,558 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways. I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As once again, these two titans... Did he not tell him? What? That last sec... So, this is indeed considered a dick move. Up until the last 3 seconds of the countdown, you're allowed to switch your race, technically in the lobby. Now we're debating the scale of that adjective. But, Reynor counters would know it wasn't, though the sense of time for Reynor might be skewed. So, now, it's not a huge difference. Okay, well. Serral may have been so locked in that he actually didn't realize. So, Now, this is quite a talkative early game for these two, I will say. Especially Serral. Now, it's not so much you gotta change your build, as Zerg pretty much does some version of the same build in every matchup by requirement, but it's more of a mental thing. If you're preparing for, in this case, Zerg versus Zerg, which requires a bit of a different mentality than Zerg versus Protoss, very much so. Zerg versus Protoss is like finding the gaps in the fortress as you besiege it with hundreds of your peasants, whereas Zerg versus Zerg is a knife fight in a phone booth. So you're preparing for 2 very different things, though chainmail would help in both for some reason, but I digress. So we'll see if Serral can kind of mentally adjust. I mean, I'm sure he can, but interesting that Reynor would make kind of a spontaneous decision to play Protoss. Now, recently, much like the only other player who seems to have the speed, Clem, he's off-racing Protoss in order to avoid mirror matchups, which statistically has actually been working for him. But we'll see. As Serral comes in with the first Overlord. And, it's going to be an Avoid Ray to start. As the Overlord will try to... Nope, coming back around. Never mind. Might as well. Making sure he sees the Void Ray. Interesting that Serral didn't comment past that point. But I'll let you read into that because I have no insider information. Just, I imagine some brow furrowing. The cold shoulder, if you would. Now, because it's so rare, the switching race, there aren't too many rules about it besides... Well, most tournaments have no rules about it since it's not a real concern. And still isn't to this point, with only 2 players at any sort of meaningful points of the tournament really partaking. Void Ray burns out that first Overlord. A few Zerglings coming out. There will be an Oracle behind and already a lair on the way for Serral. Leaving his options open. Does have a 3rd base, building a bunch more drones now, though. And the Zerglings will keep Reynor honest. And Reynor not really abiding by such restrictions as... A fleet beacon is the first meaningful piece of tech. He will sprint towards the Golden Armada. And he calls to the Sky Toss for aid. Interesting choice. Now there's a Baneling nest on the way for Serral. Maybe anticipating some sort of big, like, Glaive Adept or Charge Lot timing. That wouldn't be the least bit surprising considering the context. The Baneling nest is good to have, but usually you only get it if you have strong suspicions of something. It can obviously translate into a sort of attack, but it's a bit costly. Well, any investment of gas early can be a bit costly, so. A Tempest. Not even a mothership. A Tempest first. Serral, gonna take a look around. He doesn't know about the fleet beacon yet, but he's just keeping tabs on things. Reynor gonna spot the 4th base, which, honestly, a little on the later side of things, especially considering he was able to cancel it. There's a forge completed, building a shield battery, the Void Ray going back and forth with the Queen. Queen can't really go forth, of course, but... Hydralisk speed is on the way. Serral's at exactly 66 drones. Exactly 3 base saturation. Maximum income, minimum investment. In order to hit as sharp a timing as possible. When your opponent's doing something weird, just go kill him. And that seems to be the strategy that Serral wants to employ. Ideally, especially if you suspect they're going for like a Sky Toss composition, you want to get in there before Storm. If you have to cut your 4th base and some drones out of the equation, but you can get some damage done before Storm, I think almost every Zerg will take that opportunity. Because especially with energy recharge, Storm becomes such an existential threat to the Zerg that some players will just throw themselves against a wall instead of trying to long-term counter it. But the Banelings come in great. Force field from Reynor, but not great enough to keep many of the sentries and adepts from going down. More cannons coming up. Gonna reinforce the 3rd base. Hydralisk speed, just now completing. Overlord speed is on the way. Serral still has not added a singular drone. He has exactly 66. In fact, Reynor actually has more probes now. So Serral is becoming more all-in with this attack. He needs to get some damage done. Overlord speed likely could translate to some sort of massive drop play, which is a big investment. But against someone who's spread so thinly and has defenses concentrated at the front, well, it can likely pay off. 4 Dropper Lords, 5 on the way. Where is he building them? Back at home, but once they got it done, they're pretty quick, so they can come across the map. The Hydra's just gonna re-angle. There's no cannons at all at the natural. Protected by a wall off and some rocks, but walls on their own don't stop anything. So, Reynor investing hundreds of minerals at the 3rd base and almost nothing at the natural. The force fields will not keep the Hydras from firing over the top. Got a Guardian Shield. Hydra's getting ping cushioned, but also ping cushioning in turn. Takes one of the Tempests out of the sky. Tempests just don't have the damage output. It requires 3 shots to take down the Hydralisk, and there are far too many of them. The Hydra's just streaming through the gap. The Dropper Lords are like, well, fine. Why did you call us? As Serral just goes across, and I think he's killed him. Maybe a bit of a spiteful vengeance here. But showing Reynor that just because he picked Protoss doesn't mean he picked an option that'll keep him in the game for very long. Serral with a dominant victory in Game 1. Does not waste any time getting to the late game, because Reynor unable to hold the attack. Well, more one-sided than a Mobius strip indeed, as we go into game number 2 on Neon Violet Square. I'm not sure the rules of the tournament, if Reynor is able to switch back to his native Zerg, or if he's locked in for Protoss this whole time. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because for now, and I'm not surprised considering it's new. Now, the one thing that might be off-putting, all right, especially for Serral, is if he went through the veto process or pick ban process for maps, assuming Reynor was going to be Zerg. All right. If that happened, and then Reynor said, actually, I'm playing Protoss, because Reynor probably knew in his head that he was playing Protoss. That's how I could see, even if he told him after the pick ban process, that could be considered quite a dick move. Technically legal, but frowned upon. So I'm going to read way too far into it, because it's more fun that way, and say that Reynor may have told him he was switching to Protoss, but he probably did it after they picked their maps. You might have been like, well, Zerg versus Zerg. For example, Neon Violet Square is not a map that most Zerg players really want to play a late game Zerg versus Protoss on, because Protoss can get pretty much the entire tech tree. You can grow it like a bamboo shoot over here because you've got 3 bases with full sets of gases, essentially protected by your natural. So if there was ever a map, unlike Abyssal Reef, well, Abyssal Reef is also a good turtle to sky toss map. It's just Reynor maybe went a little too quick on it. So, well, it doesn't seem to have affected it so far. Serral with a decisive victory, as Reynor got almost nothing done and just keeled over. Well, how do we go with game number 2? Throughout the years, well, there were several years, if you remember back not too far. I remember the first major, maybe not the first major Reynor versus Serral match, but the one with the most on the line. When Reynor was literally so young, he couldn't play in WCS, the World Championship Series, many years ago now. Because it had an age requirement of 16 for various reasons. So he turned 16 before the last tournament of the year. I want to say DreamHack, something or other. So, in order to qualify for the BlizzCon Championship, Reynor had to win. Because winning one of those tournaments meant you automatically get a slot. Even getting second place, you did not get enough points to qualify. So, it went to game 7. 3-3. Like 30-minute game, Serral won. And that, I remember being the first part of that, this rivalry between these two players. I think Serral over the years has definitely maintained a higher level of consistency, but Reynor has peaked higher because of his sheer talent, like overall. So and also they're on the same team. They're friends, from what I understand, as best I could tell, or they're frenemies. Unclear, maybe both. But a lot of practicing together. I mean, they're on the same team. I'm not sure how much teams matter nowadays in StarCraft 2. I wish they did more, but it's not a team game. So, as much as we like to play 2v2 and stuff on the side, but I do wish that mode had its own sort of balance. But I digress. Feels like I'm avoiding the game at hand. But so are... Wait, Serral went for Overlord speed, but he used it to get away. A Void Rays indeed. He went for Overlord speed after scouting, and he will use it to escape from the Void Ray, which is now finding just a lot of empty space and confusion. Clever girl. Another Obi coming in, headed towards the natural. The Void Ray may actually accidentally intercept it. But Serral already running up hard back at home. Is that another Stargate? Oh, Void Ray. And lights it up. So as long as you maintain a direct path, the Void Ray kind of locks on to a unit. That's why, and has more range than its baseline. Kind of like a Cyclone, but also very different because if you move the angle a bit, it actually breaks the body. A Forged... Okay, here we go. 2 Stargate. Is he gonna go Mass Phoenix? Roddy? Is it... Serral quite comprehensively dismantled the Stargate play last game. But this map is a lot harder to do a direct attack. Overlord coming in. He's going to get the scout on the Phoenixes, and because of the way the Stargates are, he will have a, he will know they are Phoenixes. A Spire is on the way, but it's not for Mutas. Instead, very likely for Corruptors to directly deal with this, because again, Reynor is going straight up to mass Stargate units, which, usually the reason you go for Stargate later is because the ground army is very strong, but it can be countered. Lurkers, Broodlords, Vipers. They're all decent against it, especially Lurkers. So then you get the Stargate to kind of dislodge them because Lurkers obviously not very good against air. But when you go Stargate first, and then fill in the ground, it could be even stronger, but you have a much weaker midpoint, where if you don't have Storm, in fact, in this case, it's just going to be Phoenixes. So, did he see it? Did he see this? He saw the Spire. He saw the Spire. It's done now. It's gotta be Corruptors, right? Yeah. So, pumping out some Corruptors. He's got 86 drones in 6.5 minutes. This is... What? Oh my. That is ridiculous. That has to be some sort of, like... I don't... If you put no opponent in the game and just let Serral go for 6 minutes, just playing with himself, how far could he get? It can't be... I think he just lifted up a changeling. And a fleet beacon is lit. Uh-huh. Phoenix range? It's gonna be spotted immediately. The Overseer and the Changeling just came in. So, Reynor trying to take a 4th base. I say trying because it feels like Serral will be able to build up. Reynor's at only 60 probes. So Serral with currently 1,300 more research. Get off my creep! Okay, Brenda. I know you're upset about the sky toss. They can fly. Okay, Brenda. Sorry. Oracle taken out of the sky. 3 Phoenixes at a time. Still no Phoenix range on the way for Reynor. The Phoenix range is really the only way that Phoenixes can deal with Corruptors. Because Corruptors with their base armor and similar range combined to be more than enough of a counter. That's what Corruptors do. They're anti-air units. Caustic Spray exists, but mostly to force them to commit their air units. And Serral loses 1 Corruptor, but will knock out the Void Ray, and has enough of them to bully everything else. The Queens brawling it out with the Zealots alongside the Roaches. Charge is done, but the Corruptors, there's almost enough of them to spawn camp right now. He's got +1 done, and enough to one-shot Corruptors, or Phoenixes, rather. Phoenix range is closing in, but Serral, he just has a bunch of... What's the ground army? It really isn't. There are 4 Zealots, 4 Stalkers, and 18 Phoenixes, against now 13 Roaches and any amount of Ravagers. And the Zealots are on the other side. The Phoenixes are not nearly high enough in number to just... engage the Corruptors. He has to kite away, which means there's nothing to contest the ground army. So Serral, this must be dealt with by Reynor, but he doesn't have anything. The Corruptors are being cut off. The Phoenixes have +1 in range now, which makes them a lot more capable against the Corruptors. But Serral now just running him over on the ground. There's nothing to contest the ground army. Hello? Well, this is not looking great. Well, there's a GG! That's certainly 1 counter. Oh. Okay. Well. Interesting development. After 2 decisive and almost embarrassing victories for Serral, it does appear you are allowed to pick each game. Let me introduce. Oh, Reynor. Now, I cackle with laughter, uncomfortably, piercingly, because I'm sure it was very clear in the lobby, and Serral was looking at it. Serral, no response. Which, you know, I'm not even going to give this one a yellow card, because... So if Reynor was up 2-0 and then he switched and said that, oh, come on. But losing 2 games and switching it up, So, on the other hand, the Terminator. Alright, Zerg versus Zerg. The most technical brawl. The knife fight in a phone booth. The, Nope. Too many things came to mind too quickly, and we'll have to work our way through them, but the technicalities of Zerg versus Zerg are very easy to miss. But the reason it's a knife fight in a phone booth is because you can pretty much always see most of what your opponent is doing. It's very hard to hide anything because of overlords. There's no answer to overlords besides queens in the early game. And the queens, we all know about their joint pain off a creep. So the overlords are pretty much able to scout any sort of ground army moving out for most of the early and mid game. You will not be able to sneak the Zerglings out. But the real hidden information is how many Zerglings you're building, because the Zerglings can get across the map before your opponent can potentially build enough to respond. So there's a lot of calculated gambling in the early game. And the mid game, of course. And then from there, we go into tech chicken. Like, if both players are building roaches, does someone go mutus? Do we try to get to lurkers? Things like Nidus, burrow move. Plenty of times, we have exactly the same tech from both sides. Roaches with a few more drooling on each other. But, plenty of times it goes completely opposite directions, where one player ends up with a severe tech advantage, but so little economy they can't capitalize. So, I've really covered all the options in a basic strategy game, and now we're just going to have to see how it plays out. As Serral Zerglings come across, still conspicuously silent in the chat. Baneling Nest on the way for Reynor, putting it as part of a potential wall-off at the front. Few more Zerglings in production. Serral gonna press the issue. Has he seen the Bane Nest? He has not, but he's seen the third base timing. Similar to his own 18 Zerglings on the way, as Reynor builds drones. So that Baneling Nest is going to be absolutely required to help deal with this. He's not gonna have, there's just not gonna be enough larvae. That's the real dramatic part of this, is larva commitment. Because while you might see the Zerglings coming, there's simply not going to be enough larvae to build the Zerglings to match this. So we have to have the Banelings, maybe use the Queens. Third base going to come under attack. Reynor has now a drone lead. So the tempo advantage will go to Serral. He committed to the Zerglings early. If he can take out the third base, that's a massive win. But the Banelings are here. And he's going to try to zone out of the base. There's a few Zerglings that made it into the natural. More Banelings rotating around. And great split. Serral manages to eat it with just one. But the other Zerglings, the hatchery in the red, not quite dead. The Queens are coming up. And Serral, well, that is a solid victory. Not an overwhelming one. A solid victory, though, because look at the drone count. Houdini over here. Not only did he make more lings, but now he's turned the drone count around because Reynor had to build the counter lings and Banes. He lost a couple, and Serral's taking advantage of that. But Reynor strikes back. The Zerglings across the map. The Queen's a little out of position. Exposed. Brandon, no! 2 drones taken down so far. A few more pulled off the line. Banelings gonna help out. Reynor building some drones behind. And the Zerglings, ooh, mutually assured destruction, it seems. And another Queen. It only takes 4 Zerglings. Throws out an inject. And then will be sacrificed. As Reynor has now taken the drone lead. Both by building his own and removing Serral's. But what is this? Turn around! Oh, he could kill the hatch. He does! Uses the Banelings and still has enough to spot the roaches coming across. Both sides have switched into roaches so smoothly that I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice the roach warren. I'll admit it. But here we are. The roach phase has begun. As we've added in another dimension, the roach is much slower, but great at zoning out Banelings and making it a lot harder to do small Zergling run-bys because the roaches will just clean them up. So the worker count, almost even. Serral still has that 4th base, which is a big advantage when it comes to production, but also a bit of a liability. Overall, though, Reynor, well, here's the thing. The 3rd base is almost entirely about production at this stage, as both of them are under 50 drones, which means neither of them could really take advantage of an additional base and get a huge amount more income. So Serral's 3rd will pay off as he starts to have more efficient mining. But Reynor, on the other hand, a lair and +1 ranged attack, which is far superior to the Carapace upgrade. The ranged attack scales and adds more damage than the Carapace reduces, because armor is only a flat reduction of 1 per attack, whereas weapon attacks scale. Especially in those roach fights, it makes a big difference. The Zerglings are going to get in, because of course they do. He's going to spot the lair. If he could actually see it finishing, that'd be a huge advantage, just having that knowledge and that timing. Very conspicuously, Serral is not building a lair. He's building more roaches. I'm sure he's going to get Ravagers, yeah. That's how he's spending his gas. He's effectively all in. Roaches and Ravagers on the way. And now, once again, Serral is going to be the aggressor, and Reynor's going to be on defense. If he survives to +1 and roach speed, with a similar economy intact, Reynor's in pole position. But that is a lot of roaches coming across. There's a lot of Ravagers as well. The Ravagers, less for doing damage and more for kind of dictating the pace of the fight. It's 23 roaches to 28 in favor of Reynor, but 5 Ravagers and a bunch of mains. Going to knock out one of the Ovies. And actually supply block Reynor. Kind of a big deal, especially at this stage of things. The Ravager's in kind of a poor position. That +1 ranged attack is closing in and could easily even this up. Serral eating corrosive biles, but the banelings are rolling in, forcing the roaches to split. He's going to take out a couple queens. That Evo chamber looking quite juicy at this point, but he's not going to bother with it. Doesn't want to risk wasting the extra time. And Serral jumps on the army at the 3rd, but there's 2 spine crawlers here. The backbone of the defense holding things down. Roach speed completes. And the dance continues. Takes out the evolution chamber, but he already has that +1 attack upgrade, which means Reynor going to be able to drive this back across the map. Serral now building a lair and an Evo chamber himself, which is not a good sign. He kills his own roach and doesn't get the Overlord. Reynor is ahead. There's no 2 ways about it. He's got more drones, he's got better upgrades, he has roach speed. Does he even have more roaches? Yes! So in fact, you might not recognize how ahead he is because he hasn't gotten the information on Serral's side of the map. But at this point, he could probably just come across the... He could probably just come across and potentially win the game. Now, there's a big Zergling counterattack. But there are roaches in place to defend. Serral just going to rotate around. Eats a few. This will drag it back for now. Dodges the corrosive biles. 4th base is delayed. Zerglings on top of the roaches, but the +1 allows him to kill Zerglings in just 2 hits instead of 3. Which is why it's another reason why it's such a big deal and such a big progression in tech. Because roaches don't attack too fast, but when they do, well, cutting down on that number by that much is dramatic. So, Reynor, more supply, better upgrades. But Serral is closer to his rally point, his production. Roaches and Ravagers trading fire again. Some Overlords just kind of wandering around. Reynor rotates. He's gonna head towards the 3rd base. And Serral's about 30-40 seconds out from his key upgrades. And that will just draw him even, not put him ahead. So Reynor has the advantages. He can wait for his moment here. If Serral's out of position for even a bit, machine guns now, another Overlord. Some Banelings from Serral. Sneaking in. But between the spine and some roaches, gonna get minimal damage. I don't know if he spotted the Spire. I believe he did. But at this point, Reynor, he's maxed out. There's no reason not to go for something like a Spire, which might be able to win the game on its own. But the Roach Ravager, again, trading fire. Oh, trying to slip around the back. +1 attack about to complete, but Reynor's Roaches close in. The Ravagers. Oh, Reynor's just battling it out. He finishes +2 mid-fight, and the advantage is shifted right back toward the Italian Stallion, who puts a point on the board. Serral types his first of the game. GG. As Reynor turns it around in ZVZ. Interesting. Huh. Games like that make you wonder why you pick Protoss and all. But Serral just a half step behind on pretty much everything. And that translates into a very, Oh, is he 12 pulling? Serral? Is he gonna pull the drones? Now, there is actually a macro 12 pull. All right. I know it sounds silly, but in ZVZ, he's building more drones. That's an extractor trick, right? No. Oh. Oh, this is incredibly quick. This is full aggression. Now, on El Dorado, the Overlords will scout the main base pretty quickly. But they won't, unlike other maps, you don't have vision of the normal attack path. So I think that's what Serral is exploiting here. With what looks to be a very quick Zergling speed pool rush. There's just no info. You can just get enough Zerglings to just go kill him. Oh my, it's a Bane. He's just gonna Baneling bust. Wow. Okay, this is pretty much the cheesiest thing you can possibly do. Even more cheesy than a straight up 12 pull drone pull. Because this relies on hiding information for so long. Now, the beauty of it is how little Reynor can do about it. By the time he gets any information, like, there's not much to be done. The Zerglings are going to show up. I wonder if he's going to be, well, a little bit later than he might have expected for the earliest pull, but the Zerglings are on top of the hatch. He's sneaking a couple more into he spots the Banelings. There's a spine crawler in the main. He builds an Evo chamber to block out for it. He's just gonna take out the hatch. We're 2 minutes into the game. The hatchery will go to Banelings. Hello? Okay. He just throws him into the hatch and then completely stifles his aggression there. Gonna back off from the broodlings. She'll buy a few more seconds. Baneling nest on the way for Reynor. He now has a queen. He actually canceled the Evo chamber. Gonna rebuild it. Kept it in position. Looking to go to the other side. And full walls off his base. Wow. Alright. The Zerglings. That is a Bane nest on the way. Serral. A few more Banes on the way. No speed. That queen needs to move back. If she gets caught, well, that's a disaster. Reynor actually snuck a few Zerglings out. Serral has an expansion. One Baneling on the way for Reynor. He tries to counter, but actually oh my god, it's a disaster. The exact worst time to misclick. 10 drones. How did this? Pictures taken. There's only a split second to make the decisions, and if you take the wrong turn, that split second is over very quickly. A decisive and brutal victory for Serral. Indeed, he went back to the spawning pool on that one. Wow. Huh. And that puts Serral on match point with a vengeance. This is angry Serral today. I may be reading into it too much yet again, but I'm willing to do so. I'm willing to think this is how Serral treats frustration, which is just completely destroying his opponent. Took him one game to adjust to the fact we're playing Zerg versus Zerg now. But Reynor gonna get shell-shocked into game number 5. Leyland. Wow. And honestly, Reynor had a strong defense. He got a little greedy canceling the evos, but if he doesn't lose 10 drones in that exact moment, I know, it's a very specific scenario, but if it's like 6, I think the game goes on. Because then he's about equal with Serral with, he has a queen, he has spines, but it was just such a decisive blow. And all it takes is that split-second misclick. I think he was trying to split his drones back behind the mineral line, but because of the pathing, they ended up going forward, and, well, then they didn't end up going anywhere at all, except the units lost tap. So, game number 5. Serral up 3-1. Reynor has quite a tall order ahead of him. I don't think impossible, but he's going to have to be extra careful nowadays. Nowadays, I guess that's also true, but now, just this day, specifically, when this was played. Got it. Like and subscribe. Today. Not nowadays. Today would be good. Overlords, we'll take a look around. Perfect info. You're going to see any Zerglings coming out. You're going to have a good beat on the third base timing. Once again, a clear mirror matchup. Usually the first Overlord takes the main potential attack path. The second Ovi comes across and looks for the third base itself. Interesting that Reynor's Ovi is so much later in that than Serral's. And Serral will have Vision of the Third. Well, he also got Vision of the Third with the Zerglings that went by it, so there is that. Roach Warren. Very quick Roach Warren for Serral. Is it part of the wall or is he hiding it? Well, that's at the very back corner of the main. That's about as clear of a hidden Roach Warren as you're going to get. Now, does he bank up as it finishes? That's the question. That's how you know if he's going to do some sort of big early attack or just has it defensively. Though it's a little odd to hide it and then have it defensively. Though, of course, that plays into the poker game again. Like, if you hide the Roach Warren, they're going to expect to be fighting Lingbane with Lingbane, and then the Roaches show up, and they're kind of thrown off, and you can translate that into either economic or just straight-up advantages. Boxing out the Zergling. Serral definitely playing it close to the chest here. He's got a whole lot of Roaches on the way. The Zergling sneaking around. The Overlord will spot this. Oh yeah, he sees it. See his mini-map cam move as well. Roach Warren's about finished for Reynor, so he should have the time to respond, but he's going to take some damage early. If he loses the third base, That's the big potential blow to start. Splits off a couple Zerglings to deal with the Baneling. Doesn't find it, but the queens are coming off the line. Karen, get out in front! Why is it always me? Because of what you said at the last Hatchery Owner Association meeting. Okay, the roaches are battling it out. The queens are all dead. And roaches just targeted down as they come out of the hatch. Serral approaching a critical mass of units, able to intercept the reinforcements. More trickling out of the third. Reynor still has 40 drones, so he's able to produce more. He lost all of his queens, but neither player really has the economy to use all that larva. In fact, Serral's in a bit of an awkward spot. He has 350 minerals in the bank, but no larva at all. So, obviously not on... Well, he's on top of the injects. It's just doesn't have enough overall. And Reynor starting to stabilize. Even though individual roaches are getting picked off, a Baneling comes through. And Serral building 7 more drones back at home. So clearly, Reynor has held for now. Baneling, not going to see those juicy hits, except for with the very, very notable exception of last game. And that was drones, which are not nearly as fast as speedlings, much to their dismay. Another queen pops out, but Serral trying to work on the overlords. This one mildly inconvenienced. Layers on the way for Reynor. Worker count's dead even now. Serral again going to be later on the tech, more focused on just economy in general. Baneling used to keep a scouting ling from getting in. It's not particularly efficient, but denying that information is obviously the priority. So, after the initial aggression, both players back to their corners, building up. The overlords scouring the very edges. And the Ravagers are coming out. Get them. Just the intimidation of the Ravagers. Zergling will scout the drone count at the third. Lair on the way for Serral now. Reynor starts roach speed, so he's going to have the roach speed advantage, but he does not have an evolution chamber. So Serral will have +1 ranged attack, which, since it looks like he's going to be on defense, well, that's the preference. It's better to have the upgrades, especially if you're on defense. Roach speed, on the other hand, allows you to just use sheer numbers. Reynor starts a Spire. And is going to be angling towards the Mutas as an actual tactic as opposed to a finishing move. Zergling gets taken out. The Spine's moving up. Spines for Serral as well, as both players concerned about outright attacks. Reynor coming across with the roaches. He's masking this well. The best defense is a good offense, and if Serral... Wow, Serral not intimidated. He spots the gas geysers, and I think he's pretty clear at this point. He starts a Hydra Den. He knows, even before scouting the Spire itself, and I don't know if he will. He knows it's a Spire. He cancels his Spines. He starts a Hydra Den. He's not scared of a ground attack, and he's pretty convinced that higher tech will be required. But Reynor is already leveraging the potential map control. He's got a 4th base on the way. That's the rich Vespine geyser, potentially. Down the center. Serral going for a 4th base to the north side. Overseer barely skirts away. 7 Mutas are in production. But Hydras are joining them there as the Lisk phase has begun. And the Spire confirmed by Serral, his suspicions validated. Overseer taken out, but it only had so much time, especially with the mutas coming out. Some spore crawlers are on the way, but the mutas in low numbers do not compete with hydras. At some point, the mutas become numerous enough that, since they can fly, the terrestrially bound hydras struggle. But 7 mutas is not that number. And it looks like Reynor's just using them as a crowbar here to kind of pry open an advantage on the ground. But the Zerglings get into the natural. No Banelings in position. This is a very awkward time to be dealing with this. 3 drones dead. Serral gets into the main with a tactical counterattack and distracting it all here. The entire army. Oh no, Reynor. Oh, Reynor. These effectively select all army. All the way back home. Like 50 roaches chasing down 10 lings. Bit of a disproportionate response. As Serral now has his 4th base done. Reynor does as well. 62 workers apiece. Hydras gonna pop a few more overlords on the way over. And, well, they're both at 200 supply. Serral will have +2 attack quicker, and he has a much better fighting army. Reynor has a few more Ravagers. But Roach Hydra is better in a straight-up fight than just Roach Ravager. But the Corrosive Bowels, of course, can change the equation. The Mutas might be able to pick off smaller groups of things. Still just the initial ones. Hasn't added any more afterwards. Beyond it, we got Burrow Move on the way for Serral. The Hydras are ripping the Mutas out of the sky. We're fighting down the center. A wave of Corrosive Bowels comes out. The Mutas will be driven back. Reynor actually has much more money in the bank. Serral, though, Infestation Pit, and then there's the Hive and Lurker Den. Burrow Move roaches, but are they spotted yet? Did he see them? At the roach sign? Oh, no. Oh, beautifully done. He's gonna see it. He's going to see those roaches. He's gonna come back and... Well, the roaches are already popping up and dealing with the economy. Serral. Just the small stabs in. Just some roaches running into the natural for Serral. Reynor with a counterattack, but most of the Roach Hydra is bearing down in the center base. Corrosive Bowels come out. Reynor abandoning the base. He's lost 12 drones so far. The Roach Hydra finds a good concave. Almost certainly going to be able to take out this hatchery. Roaches scurry into the main underground. Same thing happening in the main base of Serral, but he'll burrow his drones to save them. Smart presence of mind there. And both sides still replenishing their armies as Roach Hydra and roaches, neither of which do a ton of damage quickly to each other, comparison to some sort of unit compositions. So Reynor is able to replenish despite losing a critical mass of his economy, though he has to be careful to replenish it quickly. The Spore Crawler, Mutas are still finding some damage, but Serral starting to take a real supply lead. Corrosive Bow still hits underground. Kind of an odd quirk of it. 22 drones dead. The Mutas still picking away at things. But Serral comes away with a supply and drone lead. He also has the Infestation Pit done, the Hive. I believe he has that Lurker Den as well. So, overall, definitely advantage Serral. The Lurkers are also going to be quite a difficult threat to deal with, especially for someone who isn't even close to getting Vipers. Reynor also goes for Burrow Move roaches. It's now +2, +1 upgrades in favor of Serral over +2 for Reynor. The mass burrowed roaches. Oh, he saw the roach sign. He knows it's there. He tries to pop up. He picks off a few of them. Corrosive Bile coming out. Concave is pretty good for Reynor. Most important sort of fight for it. But Serral splitting off some roaches and hydras. The Corrosive Biles continually forcing him back. Reynor just trying to force the fight here. And doing a pretty good job so far. If he can get most of the roaches out of the way, the hydras are quite fragile. And Reynor splitting off a few more roaches to get the damage done. The battle continues. The roaches and hydras just blinking away. It looks like Serral's starting to stabilize, but the supplies are, well, apparently ending with lots of stability as well. For a moment, it looked like Reynor might break through. But the Roach Hydra is just better. Just better overall. The corrosive bows are good, but once the units thin out, it becomes easier to dodge. And very clearly, Serral was winning that fight. He had the economy. Reynor clearly didn't have a follow-up. So between the Protoss and the Zerg, Serral with a decisive victory. Reynor had quite a good game in the mix there, but Serral showing a... So Reynor and Serral went back and forth, and Reynor ends up winning a solid game. But Serral with several decisive victories and a couple close ones. As here, he'll come away with a 4-1 score and take the series. So, what do you think about switching races at the end? I quote, last second. Either way, it seems Serral quite comfortable with how to take on Reynor. And once again, showing it. So, hopefully it made your day just a little bit better. I hope to see you next time. If you got the means and motivation, it'd be awesome. Check out Patreon, YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing still free, at least for now. And we have memberships on the second channel for streaming as well, if you're interested in that. Yes, very subtle. Thank you to our meal tier patrons, Big Jiggy Dork, Mario N, for bringing in those extra minerals. Well, thank you for watching. Hope it made your day a little bit better. Make sure autoplay is on the right video. You know what I mean. And I'll see you next time. Good luck. Have fun. Stay chill.